All right, what's going on there, folks? Good evening, good afternoon, good morning. I said that backwards, but depending on where you're at, it's one of those. It is the Earthmaster back here on this Thursday, December 7th, 2023, about 12:50 p.m. here, California time. We did see some larger scale movement ramping up here across the Pacific Plate here once again with a 7.1 earthquake. Pretty strong earthquake, pretty shallow as well in the Vanuatu area. Now, the pager system was up here in the red due to the extreme shaking felt if you were in this area. Fortunately, this was well south of the Port Vila area in a less populated region out here across this area of the subduction zone. Definitely seen some interesting movement take place here over the last few days with terms of the increasing activity out here. Now, this 7.1 struck in a zone, I think the image here will explain itself. This is just historical data here since about 1900 to 2015. So this doesn't cover all the events prior to the record keeping here. So definitely in terms of earthquake activity, this is very common, very typical across the Vanuatu area. Subduction zones here can create some large earthquakes. You can see a little bit larger than 7.1 here, but for now, they got a 7.1 that struck early this morning, about 5 o'clock a.m. local time here, my time. Over here around the Philippines, still shaking things up out here in the Philippine Trench. The latest one shows a 4.9 here in that same area where we've been seeing quite the earthquake activity here over the last couple days. Let's look at the last 7 days of activity here. We got over 212 earthquakes. Goodness. That is a lot of earthquake activity, and most of that spanning back here. I got it set for the last week here, but that's ever since that 7.6 struck here, the largest magnitude here in this sequence of activity, sequence of events out here. The second, so far, largest aftershock is going to be a 6.9. And I've said here that the multitude of quakes here will eventually go down. The likelihood of a much larger earthquake than the 7.6 occurring is very slim. I do not see that happening. But as always, earthquake activity and aftershock movement could continue for weeks, if not months. Some of those could get up in the 5 and 6 range, as we have seen. So expect some more shaking out there in the Philippines. South here around the Molucca Sea, this earthquake coming in yesterday, 5.0, late afternoon it looks like. One earthquake this morning, a little bit further up towards the Philippines here, 4.5, about 116 kilometers deep or so. Really no further movement up here across the Kuril-Kamchatka. Still kind of watching that. China over here seen a 5.1 earlier this morning. That one 10 kilometers deep. Well off the plate boundary, but that given strain does build up here. Across the area. It doesn't have to be specifically right on the plate boundary. We do get some of these intraplate earthquakes there. 4.4 Japan, and let's see here, the Izu Trench area. I've seen a 4.7 earlier this morning. It looks like about 10 kilometers deep or so. Still waiting for some movement up here, though, folks. It hasn't happened. A little odd. Let's see here. Yeah, there was a little earthquake up here yesterday, a little 5.0 around the Vanuatu area north of Port Vila. Of course, that was prior to that 7.1 this morning. A little bit of activity along the Kermadec Trench. Kermadec Islands here in the last couple hours got a 5.2. New Zealand, see if we got anything shaking out there. Doesn't look like we got too much movement. Looks like some 3 stirring up there around the North Island area. But definitely see a little bit of migration here across this area of the Indonesia Islands area. Continue to watch that. We've got there 1127 was that 5-pointer coming into the Philippines, it looks like. All right, further to the west, some further activity out here in the Gulf of Aden. That's going to be this area right here. 5.1 earthquake occurring about 10 kilometers deep out in this zone. Was from, let's see, that was about 7 o'clock this morning or so. One earthquake way up here north in the Caspian Sea. That was about late last night, 5.4 coming in to that area. 3.7. Surprised the USGS is showing this here on the map. In the Serbia area, it looks like about 9 kilometers deep or so for that earthquake. Aside from that, looking at the rest of the region out here shows relatively minimal movement for earthquake activity around the Mediterranean. Iceland did see some further activity with a 2.8. Let's go ahead and check out the latest information here on the Iceland activity. See if they can put anything out here today as far as the Iceland Met Office. The last update was put out here yesterday, and they're still thinking that this magma intrusion area near the Grindavik, Iceland region could be migrating elsewhere, away from the region. So I'm not going to go into this and read it all again, but they still think that there's a chance of eruption, but away from this area, potentially in a completely different region of this rift zone out here. The magma intrusion area is going to be this little line right here, that dotted red line that we've been watching here over the past couple weeks, but has failed to produce an eruption. The earthquake activity here around Iceland, last 12 hours, got about 44 earthquakes or so. Looking at this area up here, well northeast of Grindavik, Iceland, this area has seen a couple different swarms here over the last week or so. So maybe that may be the new area to watch here in terms of a pending eruption in this area. I still don't think that we're completely out of the woods here around the Grindavik area, but of course, as time goes on, that is looking less likely. You got solidification going on here with the magma below, I'm sure, even though that may take a little while. It looks like we're leaning towards positive news out here across this area in terms of not seeing the eruption take place around Grindavik, but possibly somewhere else up here around this rift zone. All right, let's see what else we have here across the world. The rest of the Atlantic looks pretty quiet. Not a whole lot going on there. One earthquake down into the Mexico area, 5.8 coming in within the last hour. That is about 44 kilometers deep in the mountain ranges out here. Not for sure what the population density is here, but historical data shows the epicenter region around some very active areas. Of course, the Middle America Trench here, very capable of producing some very large earthquakes here. And some of those earthquakes extend well into the away from the plate down below where the subduction zone level is. This one, 5.8, about 44 kilometers deep. One earthquake here from yesterday, it looks like, a 4.2, 4.7 earlier. Actually, that was yesterday as well. So let's see what's going on here across the California area. Getting any further movement out here? Well, we're still seeing some elevated activity out here across Southern Cal. Latest activity shows a 1.7 near Banning. That is just off the San Andreas Fault. Looks like on the Pacific side of the plate boundary. Still seeing a little bit of movement here in and around the southern branch of this plate boundary. Down here across the El Centro area to the west. Looks like some of this earthquake activity from today, it looks like. A handful, but very small earthquakes occurring out here. 2.5 map and above. Got that 2.7 coming in near the Banning area, and also that 3.7 from yesterday. But still kind of watching the California area, leaving up the earthquake watch for now. Things are just extremely active around the Pacific Plate, and minimal movement here in California. No large-scale movement yet, but I think if this activity continues to remain elevated, we should definitely be on guard in some of these zones that are, haven't seen any movement in quite a while, such as California down here across certain areas, and the Curl-Kamchatka Trench over here. Nothing showing up across that area, just awfully strange. And of course, what goes on here with the Pacific Plate directly affects this hotspot here. The Hawaiian Islands looks lit up like crazy today. Did see another 4-pointer last night, the 4.4 coming in. Pahala definitely kicking up over here across the Kilauea volcano. Quite a few earthquakes stirring up here, so let's see what we got for the latest information statement on the HVO HVO site. This update was put out today here. It looks like Kilauea Volcano is currently not erupting. Last night saw moderate seismicity in the summit region with continued low-level seismic activity in the rift zones. Of course, this activity could really stir up with little to no warning as far as the eruption goes. But right now, it is not erupting. These guys right here, I like how they say that. Following a 5.1 and a 4.4 last night, they don't believe any of this activity is related to volcanic activity. Even though now we're seeing an uptick in earthquake activity a little bit further up at the surface. I believe firmly what goes on below, where the magma may not be super concentrated at the surface. I think it is to an extent, but there's obviously further magma movement well below this area. And of course, that is volcanic, right? Neither of these earthquakes are believed to be directly related to near-surface volcanic activity. So they enter in that word, near-surface activity. So they're talking about the magma that's inflating there underneath the summit region. They said no associated changes were observed at Kilauea. Well, I would call an earthquake swarm kicking up, right? Some elevated activity here around Kilauea Volcano. So let's go look at the inflation data. I find that hard to believe. All right. And that's just my opinion. Whenever we see these elevated earthquake movement in odd areas, such as that 5-pointer and the 4-pointer, we see the adjustment. It may not come immediately, but it does show the following days, such as today. Summit is popping back up, it looks like. This is the last 2 days. We did see a little dip and decline here overnight, it looks like. But the general trend is still peaking up here. If we were to go back the last couple months, we would see that this level right here is at its highest level of inflation in over 5 years since the 2018 eruption, which was a little bit more glamorous in terms of that type of style, volcanic style, eruption style, than compared to the last couple eruptions, which had been confined to the lava lake area, which is cool to look at, but, fissures opening up outside of residential areas, that was a little crazy event. And we could see that pop up again. You just never know. With this inflation level continuing to rise here, the question is, where is it going to take place? Are we looking at maybe more of a potential over here now across the southeastern rift zone? Because we have seen further earthquake activity in this region here. So, just because this earthquake is 23 kilometers below the surface and the other one I think was about the same, that 5-pointer, doesn't mean that it's not related to volcanic activity. I think firmly what's going on here underneath the surface is related to volcanic activity, which could ultimately affect the subsurface areas here in the days ahead. So I see how they entered in that subsurface wording. Before they said it wasn't related to volcanic activity. So I think they're choosing their words a little bit wisely there, which is good, right? Because the Hawaii Islands is all volcanic activity. All right. Let's see what else we have over here. Anything else going on across the states? It kind of jumped over here to Hawaii. Nothing showing up here really around Yellowstone. A couple earthquakes up into Idaho and Montana, but that's very typical. Throughout Texas, the oil fields getting hit pretty hard once again out here outside of Pecos, Texas, and Oklahoma as well. The New Madrid seismic zone, a couple smaller earthquakes here in the last 24 hours, including a 2.1 about 2 o'clock this morning here. This has definitely been showing some activity lately. Last 30 days of movement out here in this area shows a handful of quakes. About 37 earthquakes out here in the 1 and 2 range. This activity just basically tells us that this fault system here will one day produce a sizable earthquake once again. The last one was back in the 1800s here. A lot less population density for those large quakes that took place, but it will happen again, I believe. But this time with with more population. All right, let's see what else we got. Space weather. Anything major going on out here for space weather? I know we've been kind of watching the 3513 here. Been cracking with C and M flares. That's going to be this region up here. You look at the magnetogram here. Still shows some complexity within this area. These other sunspots are kind of just drifting away, fading out like the wind, the solar wind, so to speak. And looks like we're still popping here. There's a flare coming in right now from 3513. Notice this little bright feature right here. It is getting closer and closer and closer and closer to the Earth-directed view. So anything, say if this thing develops a beautiful large M flare or potentially produces a large X flare with a subsequent eruptive status, like far as the CME goes, then that will be Earth-directed. Right now, not so much. Hopefully it holds off here until we get a little bit more directed towards the Earth. The sun here, goodness, look at this image. That is chaotic looking. Wow. I need to bring this down just a little bit so I can see the entire image here. I do want to screen capture that real quick. That's actually really awesome. Beautiful looking image. I'm going to save that for later. But that's a beautiful prominences. They're lifting off the those sunspot regions that had been facing us. We never ever really get anything directly like that at Earth. Kind of crazy how stuff misbehaves, and then all of a sudden, look at this little feature up here as well. All of a sudden, once it's not facing the Earth, this whole sun behaves differently. But we'll keep an eye. Every time I say that, things die down. But kind of have to keep a watchful couple days here on this area as it ventures a little bit closer into the Earth-directed view. We have a 5% chance for X flare, 40% chance for M flare, 99% certainty for a C flare. Obviously, we are peaking out right now close to the M flare category with that flaring. Upper C flare, it looks like a C 8.1 to be exact. No major coronal holes, no major CMEs have been Earth directed. We did see a little bit of a prominence eruption Earth directed yesterday, but I don't really see any change here on the forecast. So just kind of see if we get any unexpected, perfect time for a train, right? Unexpected upticks in auroras. So we'll watch that here in the coming days. Severe weather. Anything going on in severe weather department? At least, well, a little bit of thunderstorm activity in Oregon, portions of Idaho. Nothing severe. Looks like maybe on day 3 we do have a slight risk for some severe weather across portions of the South once again. Last time this was a huge bust. They were talking potential for some severe weather and tornadoes, but that luckily did not ring true. Same spot looks like for this event. Slight risk for some severe weather. Looks like Saturday into Sunday. We'll cover that as we get a little bit closer to the weekend. A little bit of shower activity out here in Northern California and the Pacific Northwest once again. Looks like maybe towards the middle of December we start getting some weather down into California, but there's just one little system. I'm kind of curious to see how January, February, and March are going to play out with this El Nino pattern. Models are forecasting above normal precipitation here right now, and that's for January, February, and March. But December has been awfully dry for us here in California. It's not over, but the models are not looking good, for now. Temperature-wise, thermodynamics, well, let's see what we got heading out here as we look at as we head into the weekend. There's that potential for some severe weather. You can kind of follow that cold weather interacting with the warmer air down here, creating that severe potential. So colder temperatures behind that front, warmer temperatures out here across the west coast for the weekend. It looks like up into the northeast as well. Looks like things are cooking. Behind that cold front, well, it's a mixed bag of stuff. We do have a massive high pressure building up here into the Canada region. That is going to keep things nice and warm up there across the northern states. And it looks like that may hang around for a little bit. Look at that. The weather model is trending with that high pressure, creating any blockage there of any polar fronts coming down. So that's kind of good news. I don't want that over the West Coast. So anywhere is better than California as far as that high pressure system goes. I want the storm door to open up out here. That's where I'm at for now. May not be that way in the future, but for now, that's where I'm at. Let's see what else we got. Anything major going on the seismograph stations? Doesn't look like it. Things fairly stable for now across these graphs, but we'll continue to watch areas around the Pacific Plate. Definitely active here over the last few days. Have yourself a good one. Stay safe out there. We will catch you guys back here a little bit later on. Enjoy your Thursday.